Ritika Khera, Associate Professor of Economics at IIT Delhi, is here in the studio with us. Mr. GVL Rao of the BJP joins us and will be joined shortly by Ajay Kumar of the Congress and Mr. Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court. Ritika Khera, to you first. What are your key concerns in this? Because many are arguing that people are, using their PAN cards, and those are having to be used for opening your bank account and so on. And why should we worry about adding Aadhaar to that? What's your main concern, for instance?
Okay, so it's not at all obvious what role Aadhaar is going to play in income tax returns. Okay, Mr. Jaitley has said in Parliament that there have been instances of the same person having 5 PAN cards. Today we are not using Aadhaar in filing income tax returns, and yet they were able to find this instance or incidents of people having multiple PAN cards. How did they find it? There are other ways of catching out duplicates in the system. It can be done without Aadhaar, but the prior question is, what is the extent of this kind of duplication that Aadhaar is supposed to resolve? This kind of mindless application has happened now for income tax returns, but poor people have been suffering because of this propagandist tendency, starting in UPA 2, by the way, and continuing into this government. Old women have been knocked off pension lists. People have been knocked off PDS ration card lists because this technology, wherever it has been applied in Rajasthan, Jharkhand, even in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, is very vulnerable to failure. Yeah, you need 16.
You call it a mindless application of Aadhaar. That's a pretty strong statement.
That's right.
And that's
absolutely.
What you believe
so
it
let's
is.
think about the midday meal program. They're saying get all the children onto Aadhaar. Okay, so if all children have Aadhaar, what is it going to do? It's not going to do anything. Children are eating in these places. There may be a concern that if 95 children are eating, the teachers are still putting full attendance at 100. Why do they do that if it happens? First of all, the first question really is this kind of problem existing on the ground?
So why are they doing it?
Because I think they want to get everyone to enroll, and because they want to put the same number in all these databases, whether they are private or public, and link it so that they are able to create this kind of panopticon which can surveil and profile and track what citizens are doing. They perhaps want to do it for surveillance purposes, but definitely also for data mining purposes, to monetize our data and our usage patterns of what we buy on the internet, how we use our phone, where are we traveling, are we going by air. So there is huge potential now with big data and data mining opportunities to monetize this data. Mr. Nilekani himself has said data is the new capital. We will go from being a poor country and we will use our data to become a rich country.
So Mr. Rao, can I ask you then, the concerns that Ritika Khera has raised are concerns the opposition has raised as well. There is also a Supreme Court ruling which says that Aadhaar is meant to be voluntary. Doesn't this go against the grain of that ruling?
No, Nidhi, I think when we talk about Aadhaar, let's also look at the statistics. Let's look at the extent of coverage under Aadhaar. I think this will really spell out, this will dispel any doubts about exclusion of anyone. Because today, I think the interesting, important statistic that all your viewers should know is 99% of people of this country above 18 years of age have been covered under Aadhaar. 99% above 18 years of age are covered under Aadhaar. Point number one. These are official statistics from Aadhaar Authority, UIDIA. And as far as the total population is concerned, more than 112 crore people in the country have Aadhaar card, and that works out to nearly 92-93% of total population of the country. Therefore, anyone who is really not looking at this is actually trying to create some kind of a notion, trying to create misgivings where there should be none. And government had already, through the Aadhaar Act, I think all subsidies, all welfare schemes are being delivered directly to the citizens.
But what about the Supreme Court ruling, Mr. Rao?
Digital identity
the Supreme Court rulings has said in 2015 that the Union of India, and I'm quoting from the judgment, should give wide publicity that it's not mandatory for a citizen to obtain an Aadhaar card. So how does this square off with
Nidhi,
the Supreme Court ruling?
You see, as far as availing benefits of government schemes are concerned, I think anyone who doesn't want to avail the benefits can choose not to declare Aadhaar or not to have Aadhaar identity. So, but that doesn't. But certainly government is already armed by an Aadhaar Act of 2016, where such provisions
Actually,
already
no,
exist,
because the
and
Supreme
this
Court
act
order,
is very
Mr.
much in
Rao, the
place.
Supreme Court order said that the Aadhaar card will not be used by the respondents for any purpose other than, it began by saying other than the PDS scheme, particularly for the LPG distribution and kerosene, etc. Later, that was amended to include the Manrega,
Certainly.
the National Social Assistance Program, the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Employees Provident Fund. So, the schemes for which the Aadhaar was allowed to be used were actually listed out by the Supreme Court very specifically. Those government schemes. Therefore,
Nidhi,
why is the
Nidhi,
Aadhaar being made mandatory beyond
but
that?
Nidhi, when public interest is involved, when the government is actually ensuring a proper reach of these services, and the actual intended beneficiaries actually get these schemes and they are not pocketed by the unscrupulous individuals, where public interest is involved, where public money is saved, I'm sure this will be taken from a larger public interest perspective. And as far as the savings are concerned, the government had demonstrated savings to the tune of 36,000
But
crores.
it goes completely
No, I
against
think
the
let
Supreme
somebody
Court
go
order.
to the court. There are PILs already before the court. Government will make its position. Government will certainly argue about the public interest involved. And I think we are a democracy where everyone can challenge any of these rulings.
So,
but certainly
you're
public
basically
interest should
openly
prevail
challenging the Supreme
over
Court.
everything else.
You're
No
openly,
one should claim.
So, you're openly challenging a
No,
Supreme
there
Court
is no
ruling on
question of
Aadhaar.
challenging.
You're okay with that. The government is okay with that.
No, there is. No, I think the interest, public interest should override every other concern.
Including
and
the Supreme
therefore,
Court.
I think the Honorable Court also will certainly take a very positive view of it, even though they made such observations in the past. In the light of the subsequent developments, the public savings, the public good involved, the transparency and ensuring leakages don't exist, certainly one has to take
Okay,
one
Ajay,
will take
before I
a
get to
broader
it, I just wanted
perspective
Ritika
rather
to-
than a very narrow perspective.
Okay. You know, he's saying when public interest is involved, it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court has said in the past, that the court will also take a generous view of this.
Okay, on public interest, let me help him a little bit. You know, their biggest success, so-called success on Aadhaar savings is supposed to be LPG savings, and they keep saying sometimes it's 14,000 crores, sometimes it's 30,000 crores. At the time when the government was claiming 14,000 crores as savings because of LPG Aadhaar linkage, in October or in November 2015, there are PMO minutes which say that the savings because of Aadhaar in the LPG was only 91 crores out of 14,000 crores that the government is claiming. After that, there has been a CAG report which says that yes, the total savings in LPG have been 14,000 crores or so, but only a very small fraction, about 8% is because of Aadhaar. The rest is because international prices went down. So what is being packaged as public interest? It is true that savings have gone down or the savings have happened, but the source is not Aadhaar. We have to understand that Aadhaar was packaged as something that would enable welfare by UPA 2 government. That packaging was complete lies, whether it was in the case of PDS or NREGA or midday meals or LPG.
So let me ask Ajay Kumar. Ajay Kumar, what is the Congress's position on this? How do you, having been the party that actually, in a sense, fathered this this whole idea of Aadhaar,
Horror story.
how do you criticize the government for what it's doing today?
No, first of all, you know, I think the Aadhaar as a concept is not wrong. The utilization, and I'll list 5 points which are very clear. One is when Rao Saab says that the Supreme Court order is not relevant in its public interest. Those are statements which even dictators from North Korea make, because the Supreme Court, the Attorney General went to the Supreme Court and extended it to only 5 services. So what the government of India says is, no institutions of this democracy is valid. We will do it our way, and the Supreme Court, and that is the danger. So it's not a question of moral. It's what is happening to this country, that you show the thumb to the Supreme Court order, you keep challenging, saying challenge it in the court. Whereas the Attorney General went to the Supreme Court to extend it from 2 services to 5 services. The second one is that the adequate data to show that 20% failure of fingerprint verification is there, 1 by 5. So what that means, all the people in this country who are going to use these services, 1 by 5 is the data on the failure of the fingerprinting. Whether iris is 90%, whether you're going to use equipment using iris, not possible, very expensive. So you will rely on 20% failure rate. The third thing is, take on your TV channel, we just now saw an advertisement before of a bank. Now this private bank has got access to Aadhaar. There is no legal backing to it. So now this government has also made sure that private bankers, you will give it to other companies and sell it to everybody else. How did this bank give? Is there a legal backing to it? No. Now the question is it good for India, not good for India? It needs to be debated. It's not two guys who are thinking. You need a legal provision for that. But you don't care anything about the law. The fourth point is the midday meal scheme. The midday meal scheme, you have made it compulsory. Are you going to verify every kid every time you give the meal? So this kind of nonsense, Nidhi. And last, I'm coming to the PDS and pension, which is interesting. That in Jharkhand and states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, other places, there has been places where the people up to 30 to 25 to 40% have not got. There is adequate literature by John Breeze and other people. The question is, when this analysis was done, out of 700 people who were in that PDS system, 400 didn't get it because the fingerprinting was not working or the machine was not working. So you will exclude people. Will it prevent corruption? That is the biggest bunkum. So the whole narrative of this whole story, I want to finish off saying, and I agree with Gitika on one issue. When we did it in Rajasthan, the fact is that was a fallacy which has to be recognized. And I'm saying those are mistakes which have happened. But to continuously ignore the solid data, 1.6 crore
Ajoy, I see what you're saying.
Of the PDS have been excluded.
I see what you're saying, and I want to take that back to Mr. Rao. And before I take that to Mr. Hegde, that the points that Ajoy and Ritika have raised, Mr. Rao, and I come back to the point about the Supreme Court. That is it healthy in a democratic setup like ours for the government to openly go against a very clear Supreme Court order on Aadhaar, which says that it's meant to be voluntary? And you are saying that it's in public interest, but shouldn't you go back to the court first and fight that in court before you do this and foist it on citizens? That's the question.
No, Nidhi, certainly I think I think if you look at the track record of this government for the last 3 years, I'm sure you would neither you or anyone would really make such a comment, because this government always upholds every institution, every public institution in very high esteem, and there has not been an occasion you can cite, if you can think of any occasion where we went against the Supreme Court ruling in any manner.
What's
but
happening
certainly
right now?
When the government has when the government has a public interest, government also has public duty to perform. And certainly, whenever it's an occasion, certainly government will take its position to the honorable court. And I'm very, very confident Supreme Court is not going to go by some people who simply oppose for the sake of opposition. I haven't heard any valid arguments on this panel as to why we should not use a system, something exclusive, which has not been duplicated. Why we should not use this, and we should rather depend only on other lists which are available, which are not mutually exclusive. So why do you want to persist with a leaking system? And why does the Congress party find so many problems with it, when until recently they were claiming Aadhaar is their own baby? And
you do know, Mr. Rao, that till a couple of years ago, even you were opposing Aadhaar. Do you remember when Mr. Modi tweeted in 2014 saying that he found Aadhaar, that it was violating safety and security? I mean, he tweeted against Aadhaar at the time. When in that time, in these couple of years, did you find the merits in it?
Yeah, so you see, this government, let me be very honest, we do not want to junk something because thousands of crores of public money was spent on this. And certainly, why not make use of it? There are some other initiatives of the UPA government which have bled this treasury by thousands of crores, and nothing could be salvaged on it. But this is something where you can put it to public good, you can put it to use, you can ensure what was purely an identity, digital identity platform for the UPA. If we could use it for ensuring proper delivery of subsidies and services, why not? And this government, let me tell you, it has acquired major dynamism only after we came to power. When in March and May 2014, only 3 lakh people were registering per day, per month on Aadhaar. Today, it's more than double
I'm
of that.
saying you found the
So
virtues
certainly
of
we have
Aadhaar
brought
after
even
coming to
dynamism
power
into
and
it.
not before.
We have ensured greater coverage under this.
But Sanjay Hegde, how much of this is a problem vis-a-vis the Supreme Court ruling? And I come back to that. Mr. Rao is saying repeatedly that this is being done in public interest by the government, that the government has a public duty, and that the courts will be generous when they look at this. How do you see it, Mr. Hegde?
See, let's just leave Aadhaar out of it for the moment. In terms of pure legal rights, there is something called the right to privacy. The right to privacy is essentially the right to be just left alone. I may decide that I want to be alone. I don't need to have any transactions with the government. I am not dependent on it for subsidies. I don't want anything to do with the government, and I don't want a surveillance state monitoring me at every step I take, every move I make, every transaction I make. The fact that there is the government looking over my shoulder is incompatible with the right to privacy. Now let me tell you what the Supreme Court had way back in the 1960s said. In the 1960s, when the government of the day wanted to send a policeman to a known criminal's house, knock at his door every night and check was he at home by a system of what were called domiciliary visits, the Supreme Court held that this violated the man's right to privacy. Now, you don't now need to send a policeman home. Once you have, through this system of Aadhaar and a unique identity which is trackable at all times, the government knows precisely where you are at all times. Is that the kind of state that we have under the Constitution? Is that the kind of government that we as citizens have elected? Even if the government passes a law, would it be constitutionally valid? These are questions which the Supreme Court has to examine at a meta scale. So what happened was previously, when Aadhaar was challenged, there was a compromise formula. The Supreme Court said, fine, we understand the government needs some kind of data for subsidies and for certain functions alone. Only for those functions, you may proceed with Aadhaar, provided you tell the citizen that it is purely voluntary. If you want the subsidiary and you are willing to give up your privacy on a voluntary basis, join in.